intelligencesquared.com.
There's been some consensus on both sides. Everyone seems to agree democracy is flawed, that it's eccentric, that it's argumentative, that there's no alternative to democracy. But that's not the question this evening. The question is democracy India's Achilles heel? And the ushers are coming round with ballot boxes. Remember, you tear your ticket in half, and if you agree with the motion, you put the for in, and if you disagree, you put the against in, and if you don't know, put in the whole thing. And in the meantime, let's hear from the speakers one more time, just 2 minutes each, please, making their main points, starting with Mani. Mani, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Democracy is not a solution. Democracy is a framework for a solution. Therefore, as any society has flaws, so also would any democracy have its flaws. But the possibility of correcting these flaws without throwing the baby out with the bathwater is far greater in a democracy than in any other form of government. I think we need to discuss the issue before us today, which is whether democracy is the Achilles heel, in other words, the weakest point of the existence of India or the strongest point of the existence of India. And I believe that we would not be able to exist as a nation if we didn't have democracy. For after all, how would you define an Indian? An Indian is one who is not understood by most Indians when he speaks. An Indian is one who doesn't understand what most other Indians have to say. An Indian is one who wouldn't be seen dead wearing the clothes of another Indian. An Indian is one who finds most of the food of other Indians indigestible. An Indian is one who doesn't dance the same dances as others and doesn't sing the same songs as others. And the chances are that an Indian is one whose religion is not the same as that of another. Certainly an Indian is one whose color is not the same as another Indian and whose race is not the same as another Indian. Now, in this amazing diversity, how do you succeed in being Indian? What is an Indian? Well, my provisional answer is, an Indian is one who accepts that anyone who calls himself an Indian is an Indian. Now, this kind of a society can only be sustained by a democracy in which, in addition to all the other diversities, we also have diversity of political opinion. I just totally hate to put the fate of my country into the hands of Suhail Seth. But in case the people of India make this grave mistake, and he has the guts to stand in an election, then we will find out where we'll have to accept it. And it'll still give me the opportunity of defeating him next time. And I don't get that opportunity in China. And Chinese economic development was beautifully described to me by Huang Ping of the Academy of Social Sciences, who said that progress in China means first they make you landless in order to give you a job, then they make you unemployed, so if you're without a job, you then become homeless. And when you're homeless, you have to leave the place where you're working and staying and look for somewhere else to go, so you become hopeless. So he says what we call it is that you move us from being first landless into being homeless, and from homeless into being hopeless. Now, I don't think that's a very happy system, and the cauldron is boiling inside China. There's a Chinese student at the Jawaharlal Nehru University who was asked, what do you find is the difference between Chinese students and Indian students? And his astonishing reply was that I don't understand why Indian students, like Chinese students, are not out on the streets. There are thousands of demonstrations taking place every day in China. And it's the kettles, the lid of the kettle is on, and therefore the steam is building up. Whereas in India, even if we do have 1 million mutinies taking place, there's a full opportunity all the time to try and get an answer out. And that is why, despite the fact that there is a lot of trouble and a lot of discontent in India, as Harry Dole said, we still do not think that the answer to our problems lies in picking up the gun and shooting everybody around. We believe that the answer lies in the ballot and not the bullet.
Thank you. Patrick French, 2 minutes from you.
I'd like to close by quoting a few lines back from the Constituent Assembly. This is a couple of months before India became a republic, and the architect of the Indian Constitution, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, is speaking. He is one of the great and sometimes forgotten heroes of the Indian freedom movement. He was somebody who came from the background of being a Maha, somebody who would, at that time, have been considered untouchable. When he was in class, he had to sit or squat separately from the other children, but he ended up drafting this document, or overseeing the drafting of this document. And he made 2 points which I think are very pertinent, both in the light of the Arab Spring and what is happening in parts of West Asia, and in light of the street protests and the Anna Hazare movement in India. He said that once you've got a constitution of the kind India now has, we must abandon the bloody methods of revolution. Where constitutional methods are open, there can be no justification for it. These methods are nothing but the grammar of anarchy, and the sooner they are abandoned, the better for us. Now, it seems to me that the non-functioning of democracy is directly responsible both for the Anna Hazare movement and for wider, much more substantial problems such as the Adivasi protests, the problems in Kashmir, the places where people feel they really have no alternative but to go out on the streets because democracy does not speak for them. And the other point that he made in that classic great speech was that in India, bhakti, or what we maybe call the path of devotion or hero worship, plays a part in its politics unequaled in magnitude by the part it plays in the politics in any other country in the world. But in politics, bhakti or hero worship is a sure road to degradation and to eventual dictatorship. Well, what you have today is the virtual dictatorship of a handful of privileged people who pass on power in Parliament to their children. What we need to do is to go back to the vision of the founding fathers, Dr. Ambedkar, Pandit Nehru, the people who I was quoting earlier. That is true Indian democracy, of the kind that was seen in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, until Indira Gandhi decided to declare a temporary dictatorship. Thank you.
Thank you. William Dalrymple.
If you have a Rolls Royce, or indeed a fine new tractor, that is working perfectly, and a thug comes along in the middle of the night and removes the wheels, it doesn't mean that the tractor or the Rolls Royce is flawed, it means that it's been abused. I think we need a little clarity in the thought here. The fact that democracy as practiced is deeply flawed in India doesn't mean that democracy itself is still not India's greatest strength. The democracy of India is a work in process, a work in progress. But the system is right. It is, as my friend Patrick so rightly put it, a self-correcting system. And it can be corrected in successive elections. The system is right. It is India's greatest strength. It is not the Achilles heel. All that needs to be done is for it to be reformed. But the system itself is fully functioning and entirely capable of reforming itself.
Thank you, William. Okay, Suhail, you have the final word.
So after some fiction, let's return to reality. William Dalrymple says, the system exists. It doesn't matter if in the present form it is flawed. Thank you. This is exactly what I started the debate with. That in its present form, India's system of democracy as practiced today is its Achilles heel. There may be other organs that are functioning, but there is a certain vulnerability which democracy brings to the party, and that's exactly our contention. I'm a great believer that democracy by itself is just an absolute concept. Both these gentlemen are happily married, so they now intend to romance the motion rather than anyone else. We're not talking about romantic notions of democracy here. We're talking about the real benefits that democracy brings to the table. Does it provide equality for all in India? No. Does it allow people who preside over programs to continue in power? Yes. Does it allow for dictators to return to virtuous democrats? Yes. Is there a flaw? Yes. Can that be corrected? Our solution, and we were the only side that gave solutions. We said you need electoral reforms, you need the strengthening of accountability, and most importantly, as Patrick rightly said, You need to go back to the vision that the founding fathers of India had. It's very easy for us to sit at the Royal Geographical Society and partake in this debate and say, oh, but you know, it's an interesting concept, we're all liberals. Ask the man who can't file a first information report when his wife is raped and murdered. Ask the person in a village who cannot access a school, a primary school, or a health clinic for 37 miles. Ask those people if they care about democracy or do they care about the benefits. When you and I go out and buy a brand, we don't buy brands, we buy benefits. The benefits of democracy have not touched every Indian. The concept has. Our contention is, like Manishankar Iyer used the, again, college debating example from, homelessness to hopelessness. Our contention is equality, opportunities, and aspirations need to be met. And they can only be met if we are courageous enough to believe that today, democracy is India's Achilles heel. Tomorrow, it may not be. And that's what we all hope for. Thank you so much.
Okay, so now here comes the moment we've all been waiting for, to find out whether the vote has swung one way or another. Let me remind you of what the vote was before the debate. Those in favour of the motion that democracy is India's Achilles heel was 117, and those against, 155, with 177 of you, that boggy place in the middle who hadn't quite decided. Well, the don't knows are now 19. So the debaters have certainly done their work in swinging people over to one side or the other. And those in favour of the motion, who think that democracy is India's Achilles heel, who join Patrick and Suhail with that thought, 159. 159, so quite a boost. But those who are against the motion, who are with William and Mani on this, 266. So just before you slip away, a thanks to all our 4 speakers, to Intelligence Square for organising this, the Royal Geographical Society for hosting it, and for all of you for keeping everyone on their toes and being such an excellent audience. Thank you.